Motion to reconvene into open session. Motion, Mrs. Mamalitos, seconded Mrs. Weiss. All in favor, 5-0. Please rise to the Pledge of Allegiance. Flag is behind you. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. May I have the motion to approve the minutes of our previous meeting of January 26, 2023? Motion, Dr. Siddiqui, seconded Mrs. Weiss. All in favor? 5-0. Dr. Bossert brings us up to the reason we have a packed house tonight.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ms. Tamio, and the board for giving us this opportunity to recognize some outstanding students, which is typically the portion of the agenda we look most forward to. There is a crowded room tonight filled with outstanding student athletes. It is a rare occasion when we invite an entire team to a Board of Education meeting to be recognized, but the board and I felt we'd be remiss if we did not bring forward the John Glenn High School wrestling team to honor a tremendous season. To help us do that, I'd like to call upon our Director of Physical Education Athletics, Mr. David Shanahan.
Board of Education members, Dr. Bossert, it is my pleasure to recognize the John Glenn wrestling team for winning the Suffolk County Division II County Championships. Congratulations. In the final match, John Glenn came from behind to defeat Port Jeff High School. I was rooting for you guys. Senior Kevin Vita secured the win with a pin. The team showed heart, character, perseverance throughout the dual meet championship. Championships are not just won. They are earned with outstanding coaching by Coach Brocking, Coach Nardelli, and Coach Patrovich is not here tonight. He's training the future wrestlers at the high school. Another piece of the championship puzzle of success is to have exceptional parents who value athletics and the important foundation it plays in the lives of our student athletes. The wrestling parents cheered loud and proud throughout the day, providing energy and strong resolve, and for that, we all thank you, parents. Again, congratulations to the 2022-2023 wrestling team. You have made the school proud, your parents proud, and the community proud. We certainly showed Suffolk County that Elwood Pride, what Elwood Pride is all about. Now we like to recognize our team up front. Dr. Bossert.
So before we do that, Mr. Shanahan, and thank you very much, and thank you for your stewardship and leadership of both the wrestling and the entire athletic program. Nothing happens without you behind the scenes helping to make it happen. So we thank you for your contributions as well.
Thank you.
Now we know that one of the things you've likely already done is to order that county championship banner to get raised to the rafters. But until it arrives, on behalf of the board and I, we'd like to present this certificate to the team to hang in the wrestling room until the banner gets there.
Would you like the team to come up? Team, please come up. Coaches, come on up. Mr. in class today.
Oh, yeah.
Jimmy.
Okay.
All righty. Keeping our student portion of the agenda going, we are up to our student liaison, the Board of Education. Mr. Rourke, Jimmy Rourke is here. I saw Jimmy, there he is. You're blending in with the sea of blue over there.
Good evening, everyone. Across the district, our students have continued to be active in their school communities in the weeks leading up to the midwinter recess. Harley Avenue held its annual Scholastic Book Fair this week, and students are excited for the PTA's Special Persons Dance next Wednesday. Harley's January Nights of the Month were commended recently as well. Boyd Intermediate ended January with 2 celebrations, one for its January J MVPs, Frank, April, and Braylon, and another to join Harley in congratulating Dr. Hull on her retirement. Earlier today, Boyd students were visited by the cast of the EMS musical Newsies for a great performance, and students are looking forward to a Black History Month Cultural Arts Laser Light Show next Monday. Moreover, 3rd graders will watch a performance of Frozen at Northport's Engelman Theater, and the Homework Club will be starting up soon, joining a full slate of other clubs that are seeing many active participants. The middle school's musical will be holding performances the next 2 nights here at the high school, and tickets will be available at the door. 8th grade students are preparing for next Thursday's Blue and White Night, and middle school athletics are in full swing as well. At John Glenn High School, the Shared Decision-Making Committee has implemented a Battle of the Classes initiative that will run through the end of the year. Each month, through fundraisers, daily challenges, and competitions, grade-level classes will compete to earn points to win the first ever Knight's Shield. The winning grade level will be announced at the end of the school year. For our first event in this month of February, we will be supporting our Social Studies Club's effort in raising money for the United Way through their Pie in the Face Challenge. On a separate note, the John Glenn mock trial season is underway, with our team currently ranked 5th overall in Suffolk County for public and private schools. Additionally, the Unity with Diversity Club will be hosting its annual Black History Month showcase this coming Monday. Our January students of the month are Kali Marquetos, Ibrahim Riaz, Kate Meyer, and Garrett Warren from grades 9 through 12, respectively. And Ms. Sixnell, the math department, the PPS staff, the security staff, and Ms. Acasio are this month's Noble Knights. Thank you and have a nice night.
Thank you, Jimmy. I wish everybody a restful, enjoying February break. Be safe, have fun. At this point of the agenda is when we usually let the students go because you have homework, as Dr. Bossert says, right?
Get right to the books, boy.
You guys can, families in as well, if you'd like to stay, stay. But students do not have to stay. Enjoy. Congratulations. Thanks for making Elwood proud, everybody.
Are there middle schoolers on the wrestling team? I could tell they're so much smaller. Oh, Jiminy Cricket.
All right, so much to the pleasure of the board and community, I am sure, due to our slightly delayed start, and I apologize to the board and community for our delay, but I will yield the time assigned for me for the superintendent's report to our Director of Facilities, Mr. McDonald, who will be providing a visual update regarding the work of our Facilities Committee and some of the work taking place throughout the district. Mr. McDonald, thank you very much.
Thank you. Good evening to the board, administration. Thanks for this opportunity to give you a look at what we did this past summer and where things are right now in our bond program. So, focus of the past summer was the middle school. We did 4 areas the auditorium, cafeteria, the fax rooms, and last but not least, our music suite. And we have some photos here that reflect how they presently look. The choral room has had a major overhaul, as you can see, lighting, ceiling, walls, new cabinetry, etc. The band room, which be the next one, has on the back wall there the cabinetry for our instruments. There'll be more of that being installed in the near future. We're just waiting for the acoustical treatments to go on the remaining walls. And once that's done, the rest of the cabinetry can go in, and they'll have more than enough space for all the instruments that they have in that room. It also has a brand new window, which was very nice for me to be able to see the ball team out there yesterday practicing. It was nice. Next is part of the music suite is a storage room area and a practice room, and you can see additional storage in there as well. Next photograph is of our family and consumer science rooms. This is 102, and it's formerly known as the sewing room, but it's got a multi-purpose application now with all new cabinetry, new desks, a new teacher's island, etc. And the 101, our cooking room, has got 5 brand new cooking stations. One of them is ADA compliant for handicap, and it's got a brand new island for the teacher, and from what I understand, they love it. So really came out nice. The next is our cafeteria. It's been redone. We still have a little bit more work to do on the walls, especially the wall up against the boiler room, but it has all new lighting, new ceiling, and some of you may notice that we don't have rectangular tables anymore. A lot of them around. They've got booths, separate seating areas for the kids to enjoy their lunch and the ambiance of the room. And it's also got new air conditioning as well. And here we have our auditorium. All new seating, all new wall treatments and painting, new ceiling. It's going to have a new sound system. Lighting is all new. We've got the major portion of that auditorium completed. We're now focusing on some of the stage lighting work that has to be completed, which we expect within the next month. So that, I think, is that the last one? Yes. Okay. So just to summarize some of the things that we still need to finish, we got new doors coming for the auditorium in those areas I just mentioned. They're intended to be installed over the winter break. We have air conditioning work that needs to get tested once the weather permits that to be tested, but the air handling systems in those new locations are all in place right now, providing heat and fresh air. So many of you may have been familiar with that odor in the music suite from years ago. That will never happen again. The odor, poor ventilation.
Ms. Weiss, please use your microphone so the audience at home can hear you.
I'm sorry, that, the cause of that odor
Was poor
that
ventilation.
we thought was mold was not mold, was poor
Poor ventilation.
ventilation, okay, and that's all been clarified.
Oh, yeah.
So now we have nice clean air, okay, good, thank you.
We now are planning and getting ready to do the last phase of our bond, phase 4, which will impart be work here at the middle school in the locker rooms, the art rooms, and then we've got a couple of areas over at the high school we're also going to do. The art room over there, along with the space that the teachers use in that 3-room set, with the wood shop and the art room. And in addition to that, they're putting in a robotics lab right behind the wood shop. Then upstairs, there's 2 science rooms we're gonna alter and renovate and update. All that work will take place during this coming summer. In addition to that, we're giving out those contracts right now. I believe you approved them at the last board meeting. We had to rebid the parking lot for the middle school and the track and football field for the high school. That's going to take place on the 16th, and hopefully we'll have some really good pricing and good contractors to get that project done this summer as well. So the bond is slowly but surely coming to an end. As far as our energy performance contract, that has reached the substantial completion stage, and we're into what is called the measurement and verification stage, where the Johnson Controls, who is our energy providing company, they're going to now actually analyze how we're using our electricity and our gas, what it's costing us, how much energy we're producing with our solar arrays on the buildings, and then tell us that they're saving us a lot of money. So that'll be coming up in the next year. And that's it. Any questions?
Thank you, Mr. McDonald. I would just take this opportunity to invite the community members. We are slowly starting to get more traction on our committee, our committee meetings. There's subcommittees of the Board of Education, so this is another committee that isn't always well attended. We have very few residents who attend this one. There's important work going on. $30 million that the community appropriated and supported is what we spent. 1 or 2 residents are there to talk about the projects or be a part of it. So just, want to throw it out there. It's an open committee. All of our committees are open. This is a wonderful committee. It might look boring, but there's a lot of cool, intricate things that go on. I mean, no, if some people think it might be. I'm saying it's not. It's really, you get to spend money. No, I'm kidding. It's a lot of fun, though. So I just want to throw it out there. There's a lot of committees going on. Another opportunity to join or be a part of another one. Thank you. Ms. Weiss.
Yeah, so I sit on the co-chair of the committee with Mr. Tomio, and we've been doing it for several years. So it's nice to see the progress that's come along and the money that's obviously well spent. I also, you had just posted, Lorraine, the progress chart, and that went up on the district website? Yes. Correct? Okay, so people can look at that and actually see where we are. We can see the light at the end of the tunnel, and just appreciate, and the meetings are actually one of my favorite committees. But it is. So, when I get questions from the public, I always encourage people to come, if you're, especially when the turf field was going on, because I think you do. You learn a lot from it, and you get a different perspective. So thank you very much. I do appreciate it.
Well,
There's also not a 3-minute clock there, so sometimes you get to have good dialogue and have deeper. You get that deeper conversation for real. It's not a public meeting. It's a conversation to really delve into the nitty-gritty of what's taking place. It gives you a better forum to get more of a bird's eye view and be a part of the process versus question the process for 3 minutes and then leaving not having an answer. It really gives you the opportunity to engage. So.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you, Mr. McDonald. As a former Elwood graduate, I sat in those music rooms, and to see that window, I can really appreciate the window. And to see, as a former FACS teacher, seeing all the improvements that our district's committed to all classes excites me, because we're giving opportunities for all students no matter what they're passionate about. So, I'm so lucky that my daughters will eventually get here and be able to enjoy the new spaces that I once sat in a long time ago. So thank you and your committee.
Oh, they're much different now.
Yeah, thank you so much for your presentation. I also just wanted to add, if anyone hasn't seen the Elwood Middle School cafeteria, please go and look at it. It's absolutely amazing. When I was in middle school, if I had a cafeteria like that, I think my life would have turned out a little bit differently. But definitely like those round tables and, well, maybe not, I don't know. But definitely those round tables, it's amazing. And the cafeteria really turned out very well. Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you for the opportunity. Good night.
Thank you, Mr. Donald. See you in a few weeks. All right, that brings us up to our first residents' remarks. Seeing no residents wishing to speak, there will be a second portion later on. All right, so that brings us up to our discussion, our presentations. We have a presentation on inclusive culture and community by Ms. Eileen Kelly-Gorman, our Executive Director of Special Education. The floor is yours.
As Mrs. Kelly-Gorman makes her way to the podium, I would again like to thank the board for giving us the opportunity. This presentation is celebratory in nature. Over the last number of years, under Mrs. Kelly-Gorman's leadership, our special education and PPS departments have been able to bring a steady influx of new opportunities to our students throughout the district. And I think there is a true focus on inclusivity. I think there is a true focus on diverse offerings. So tonight I asked Mrs. Kelly-Gorman to help just highlight some of the initiatives that have taken place within the department and under the umbrella of special education and PPS services. I will caution the board that this is not a fully inclusive presentation because we want to be succinct and make sure we're in line with our agenda. But these are some of the highlights. And I appreciate Ms. Kelly-Gorman being here to take the board and community through some of the good work taking place in our buildings.
So good evening. Thank you for inviting me to share some of the wonderful and exciting things that are going on within the district and the community. There's a catalog our teachers order supplies from called Really Good Stuff. And as this was coming together, it really felt like that could have also been the title for our presentation tonight. So, there it went. Okay. So tonight's presentation is based on New York State's Culturally Responsive Sustaining Education Framework, which is a mouthful. But I included this graphic as a reminder that at the center of all of our decision-making, our actions, every program we bring in are our students. And the framework aims to help educators create student-centered learning environments. It's inclusive of voice from our students, our teachers, our school leaders, district leaders, our families, our community members. It really takes into account the opinions and the voice of everyone in our school community. Nope. All right, now I got it. Culturally responsive sustaining education is grounded in a view of learning and human development in which multiple expressions of diversity are recognized and regarded as assets for teaching and learning. And so while the framework does address some of the things that you would anticipate under this umbrella of, things like race and gender, it also speaks to abilities of students. And so tonight I'm going to focus on how we reference this framework in building a school community culture that is inclusive of all of our students' abilities. All right. So here you see the 4 pillars that tonight's presentation will be grounded in, and they reflect the need to approach teaching and learning from multiple directions in order to foster student success. So it's a little darker here than it was downstairs. One of the ways to foster a welcoming environment is for students to make an effort to build strong relationships across groups, talking to and getting to know a variety of their peers. This year, Ms. Sixnell, who is our new assistant principal at John Glenn High School, created the JGHS Buddy Program, where our AP World Language students partner with some of our English language learners who may be new to the country to build relationships, support their peers in engaging in school activities. They may do some type of peer tutoring, and I'm going to stop there because I know that the high school is going to talk about it in their March presentation, and so I want to let them get to the meat of the program, but it felt like it tied so closely into the topic of tonight that I wanted to make sure that we gave credit where credit was due also. In the spring of 2022, one of our John Glenn juniors, Jake Laudo, brought a program that is internationally recognized to our school psychologists, Mr. Kilkenny and Ms. Romanchuk. The program is called Best Buddies, and it's an organization that's dedicated to creating opportunities for one-to-one friendships, integrated employment, leadership development for our students, and inclusive living opportunities for individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities. And it works through a network of volunteers, really. It's a not-for-profit organization. So our team of our psychologists, Jake, and actually Mr. Rourke, who was here before, met with the Long Island program manager, and they began to make plans to implement the program in the fall. The students at Mr. Kilkenny met over the summer. They finalized their plans, and it's been a tremendous success since it launched. They have attended school events like the Blackout basketball game last month, and they also get to go to, because it is an internationally recognized program, events that are sponsored by Best Buddies. So for example, at Halloween time, they went to a Halloween dance at Eastport South Manor High School, and they were able to meet some of their peers from neighboring districts and the Long Island community. They have an upcoming dance that's sponsored through Best Buddies in April, and a walk in May that they will be participating in. And the program really offers our students leadership opportunities. You know, we love that it was brought to us by a student who saw a need in the building. And it really increases access to experiences that some of our other students would participate in with maybe a group of friends, and allows all of our students to make connections within the Elwood community and beyond. And so this year, we introduced 2 new programs to support and welcome our parents into our buildings under the same umbrella. At the high school, Ms. Dobra, who is our guidance counselor for students with disabilities, as well as our English language learners, she partnered with Ms. Romanchuk, who again is our school psychologist there, and they developed a program to assist our parents in navigating resources to help them in the college and post-secondary transition planning process for our students with disabilities. So we were able to sit down with parents one night, and we were able to really share what our internal process is, how we help students, what things we have to offer our students within the building all 4 years that they're in the high school. And then we were able to also share some community supports and local agencies that our parents can tap into once their students leave Elwood. But what I liked most about the experience is that it also provided our parents a platform to share their experiences, to share resources, things that they found had, benefited their child or benefited their family. And so we learned from them and they learned from us. And it was really what community is all about. In March, we are going to be launching a new parent university program for our English language learner families and multilingual families, and our goal is to increase communication and collaboration among families and school staff. So sometimes language we find can be a barrier for communication between families if they don't speak English as a first language. And so our team is going to help our parents do things, everything from logging into Parent Portal, Family ID, which allows students to play sports, and really explain to families, how can they reach out to us? How can they access Google Classroom with their child? If you email us in Spanish, it's okay. We'll get somebody back to you that will call you and speak to you. So our social workers, 3 of them are bilingual. They do speak Spanish. So they will be there to provide insight into assets that exist in the school and local community, that can also help families obtain supports. Some families are struggling with things like food insecurity or obtaining medical care. And so we have a vast number of resources if we can just get it in the hands of our families. Our goal is to run this workshop in the fall moving forward, but we're going to try it out, take it for a test ride this spring, and then hopefully it'll be all set to go when we come back to school. So this pillar encourages instructional opportunities that promote a positive self-image and empower others to succeed. The Huntington Anti-Bias Task Force sponsors the Social Justice Ambassadors Program for students to develop these types of skills. The program offers an opportunity to bring together our high school students in the town of Huntington and equip them with the tools and knowledge they need to be leaders and agents of positive change in their school and community. So last month, our students were able to go and hear from a Holocaust survivor. Just yesterday, our students from the high school, their advisors are Ms. Franco and Ms. Sepp. They were able to have a conversation with Tracy Edwards. And again, it's in partnership with other districts in the town of Huntington, so they're learning from each other. This area also speaks to an environment that's academically rigorous and intellectually challenging, while considering the different ways that our students learn. And so with that in mind, I did highlight up on the left there, Ms. Dobra partnered with some of the transition coordinators from our neighboring school districts to plan a transition fair that will be open to students, all students in grades 9 through 12. It will have representatives from, I think it's over 70 college representatives, 30 different agencies in the community. So whatever our students' path may be post-graduation, whether it's career or trade school or college, there'll be different agencies and representatives there for them. And that's going to be at Comac. I know Ms. Dober sent out some information to her caseload, but after the break, she's going to send it out to the whole building also. So stay tuned if you have high school students, but that is up and coming, and we're very excited about partnering with some of the local districts around us. Another way that we have enhanced our programs is by expanding community integration and training opportunities for our middle school students, who you can see there on the left at Panera. So our high school students in our life skills program go out daily on job sites. They have been for a number of years now. And we recognized that it was important to give our middle school students an opportunity to start practicing those skills at a younger age. And so Ms. Parolo designed some opportunities. They've gone to places like Panera, Northport Village, where the students get to practice integrating and interacting in their community. And I would be remiss if I did not speak to the picture on the bottom right. It is Mr. Greening arranged a trip earlier this year for all of our students who are in the living environment courses in the high school to visit the Evelyn Alexander Wildlife Refuge Center in Hampton Bays. He used to be a volunteer there, so he knew some of the curriculum that they offered. Our students all went out, and for some of our students, we found out while we were there, and then when we returned to the classroom, that it was the first time that they had ever been on a walk in the woods. And I just think about how we live in such an ecologically diverse, beautiful area, and for some of these students, it was the first time they really had an opportunity to take that in. And so when I think about equity in our instructional programs, I think we have to remember that experiences like this are really important. And for one young man who was in a wheelchair, Mr. Idell, I'm going to give him kudos, but he took him on his first hike. And it really was just like a beautiful, touching thing. So after our successful experience last year with Unified Basketball, we are expanding our Unified program at the high school under Section 11 to include a Unified bowling team. The students will compete with other schools at Larkfield Lanes beginning in March. And in conversations with some of our teachers, our students, and our parents in the community, we realized that there was really a need at the middle school level as well, that some of our students maybe were not making the teams in the middle school, but they wanted opportunities to still participate. And so Mr. Shanahan and I sat down this summer, and we came up with the idea of unified intramural activities. And so beginning at the end of this month, we're going to offer a series of unified intramurals. It will be either a PE teacher or a coach partnering with a special education teacher, and our students will be able to sign up for anything. There's basketball, there's badminton, there's Zumba. Ms. Parolo is a certified Zumba instructor, so we're going to test things out, see what gets a good response from people, and we're really looking forward to it. I don't know of anyone else that offers it, and I'm excited about it, so stay tuned. We know that ongoing professional learning is rooted in the idea that teaching and learning is an adaptive process needing constant re-examination. So this year we continued our partnership with the Lacretz Agency, actually they were in the high school today, to provide teachers in our buildings with professional development opportunities focused on inclusive practices. But we've also this year introduced professional development around augmentative communication devices for some students at Harley and Boyd who are either nonverbal or who have very limited verbal abilities. The devices allow them to communicate their wants, their needs, and their thoughts, sometimes for the first time really, through the use of a touch chat app. And as many times as I practice that, I still can't say it without stumbling on it. But and it's just on an iPad. So the students, it's very familiar technology to them. They all know how to touch the icons. They all know how to navigate it. And so, they're taking ownership of their devices. The partnership between the special ed teachers, the speech therapists, and Ms. Albrecht has allowed many of our students to feel less frustrated and also to develop more language skills. And we're watching some of our students really find their voice for the first time, and it's quite beautiful. So we're looking forward to expanding that. And lastly, I think this is called my shameless plug slide, but it is some of the upcoming events that I hope that our board, our community members, our students will come out, join us to to experience them. They really exemplify equity, inclusivity, student voice, and all that's special about our Elwood community. And that's it.
Thank you, Ms. Kelly Gorman. Wonderful to see what's going on and provide those opportunities. Does any members of the board have any questions for Ms. Gorman?
I just wanted to say thank you so much for putting this together. It's nice to see that all students of all abilities are being represented in our district. We were lucky enough to go to a legislative breakfast, and there's been an increase of 58% of ELL learners in Suffolk County and an increase of 8.3% of students with disabilities. So it's nice to see that although we're a very small district, we have such a buffet of offerings for students that I'm very proud to live in this community where a student, no matter what his or her abilities are, has choices, which is really nice to see. So kudos to you and your department. Thank you for all the hard work, and I look forward to attending some of these events. Thank you so much.
Hi, thank you. It really highlights a lot of the good work. My question was actually two. I just forgot one of them. On the unified bowling, that's for both high school and,
Just high school.
oh, just high school.
So the way, because it is a Section 11 sport, it is.
That's what I was gonna ask, okay.
Yeah, it falls under their jurisdiction, their rules.
Okay.
Students go through sports clearance just like they would for any other sport. They have to register. So high school only, which is what prompted us to create the intramurals program at the
So I
middle
know we
school
have a
level.
unified basketball, which is great, and I love the fact that it's going to the EMS. How did we come about specifically with bowling, since we don't have a bowling team? I know some of the schools have a bowling team for their, general population.
That's the only other unified
And that's how.
approved sport in Section
Okay.
11. Yep.
That's good.
So that's, to my knowledge at least, the
And
two.
the same thing, I guess, my question with the intramurals for the EMS, do we have intramurals for, is it offered to everybody also, or is it just for
So-
I'm not familiar with EMS anymore.
Mr. Shanahan's department has always run intramural activities, mostly for our sixth graders, because they're
Okay.
not eligible to participate on middle school sports until
Right.
7th and 8th grade. So that's where the idea came from, and that's kind of what we categorize this under, because there is no sport equivalent. So that's the nature of it. We will open it up. I first sent it out to my middle school families of students with disabilities to allow them the opportunity to register first, and then we will expand it to other students in middle school, because we do want that same experience that our unified students in the
Yeah.
high school have, and so we will create that as we move forward.
I'm just wondering if it came out of like a need because you were doing intramurals and found out that this group of students were hesitant to participate, and that's why you opened it up.
Yeah, I think it's a combination of that and the lack of access to some of the traditional sports programs for some students.
Excellent, okay. I might come up with the other. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have a second presentation this evening. Ms. Dunkel is going to bring us through the workshop number 3.
As Ms. Dunkel makes her way, Ms. Kelly Gorman, thank you. I agree. Subtitle of the presentation, really good stuff, because it really is. And thank you for just taking through some of the highlights of the good work. And we look forward to future updates. As Ms. Dunkel makes her way to the podium, I will once again thank the board for the opportunity to review our budget discussions to date. The board charged the administration with beginning the budget process much earlier this year in a public format. It always starts behind the scenes very early in the school year. But in an effort to be fully transparent with the community, the board tasked the administration with beginning discussions about the budget as next year's financial position became clearer. So tonight is really the last presentation we will make to the board that has any hypothetical terms or projected numbers. We would hope that by our next meeting in March that we are speaking in definitive terms about our aid, about the state's budget, about building aid that we receive, about our tax cap calculation, all of those things that are necessary to finalize an administrative budget to propose to the board for adoption, and then for the board to adopt for the community to support. This is really the last overview discussion before we speak in definitive terms, having all the information we need to formulate a budget. So please keep that in mind, because there still are a number of unknowns as we sit here in early February that will become much clearer before our next presentation. Does that set the table correctly for you, Ms. Dunkel?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Thank you to the board for allowing me to make this presentation. And I just want to thank Dr. Bossert for presenting on my behalf in January. Though most of the information he gave you is incorrect. No, I'm just kidding. No, I appreciate him presenting on my behalf as I could not be here. So I'm happy to be here tonight. This slide serves as a reminder for our budget goals and priorities. Our highest priority is to maintain the excellence and diversity of offerings within our current program. Essentially, what we're doing is working. By enhancing our programs and our offerings to our students, we're continuing the excellent work that we've been doing. We're maintaining our optimal class sizes. It's usually a ask from some community members. And most importantly, we're being responsible, or one of the most important things is we're being responsible to our residents and local taxpayers. Ariel, is this on? Okay, one of the other goals, we talk about maintaining our fiscal health. The way we do that is by long-term budget planning. What I've come to realize is in order to do that, it's a balancing act. It becomes a balancing act between the long-term impact of district financials and our district health versus the immediate impact on our residents via their taxes. So each year when we develop the budget and work on the tax levy with administration and the Board of Education, that's something that's always at the forefront, is how are we going to maintain all the programs we have and being responsible to our community members at the same time. And speaking of our fiscal health is a component of our credit rating, to put it in simple terms. That's something that's taken into account when we receive our Moody's rating each year as related to our borrowings. So this spring, I'm sorry, I'm having a problem with the microphone. This spring we'll be going out for a Moody's rating as we're set to borrow that balance of the bond that supports all of the work that you've been seeing. And as Mr. McDonald mentioned, we have a lot of work that's going to be finished up this summer, so we need to go out and borrow the balance of the bond in order to pay for those projects. This snapshot here is an update on our fiscal health. So New York State each year provides a fiscal health rating to each school district within the state. It's based on a point range value anywhere from 0 to 100, and your school district's rating is based on those points. The points vary based on fiscal categories including fund balance, cash flow, debt, and deficit spending. So each year, New York State Comptroller takes a look at all of our audit reports, the overall financial health of the district, and provides a fiscal rating to the districts. And I'm happy to say for the 5th year in a row that Elwood has received NO's designation, which is the best designation you could have. This next slide is a history of our tax cap, or tax levy, I should say. In keeping with the model of being responsible to our taxpayers, over the last 11 years under the tax cap levy legislation, we've successfully proposed and adopted budgets either within or below the cap for each of those years. 4 of those years, we were able to come in below the cap, which has resulted in a combined $2.5 million lower tax base to the community. So essentially, by going below the cap, we were able to not tax the community. And over the course of these years, the combined savings or the combined lower tax base to the community is about $2.5 million. And I just wanted to point out on this slide, so it doesn't mislead anyone, let's see if I have my pointer here. The pointer's not working. The lighter bars that are on, sorry, I'm having such a problem with this microphone today. There we go. The lighter bars that are on this slide represent what the tax cap, the allowable tax cap for those fiscal years, and the darker bar is the tax cap that the community, and the Board of Education approved for the budget and the community adopted. So you'll see along the left axis, I believe the top number is a 6. I don't have my, but I just wanted to remind the community that I don't want these numbers to deceive anyone. We've always gone, I believe the highest cap we ever had was roughly 4.11. I think that was in the 18-19 school year. And again, the 2% is a piece of the tax cap, so we've never gone above the tax cap at 2%. So I just don't want this slide to mislead anyone.
So
Anybody?
Ms. Dunkel, I'm sorry for interrupting. If I could just, for the board, one of the things that makes Elwood a little different than some districts in the region is that one of the things that's become very typical on Long Island is for business officials to calculate the allowable tax levy cap and then the board to adopt a budget at that number. That has become standard operating procedure in many, many districts in our region and across the state. Elwood has been somewhat unique in that the board has consistently over the last few years adopted budgets below the allowable cap. And in some years, there has been a very strong rationale for doing that. Like in the 2021 school year, when the budget was adopted and the vote took place under the lockdown of COVID, the allowable cap that year was in excess of 6%. While there was certainly rationale that could have presented a strong reason to go to the community with that number and hope to move away from deficit spending and looking to reduce allocated fund balance, the board elected not to do that because they didn't feel it was financially responsible to the community. And each year the board has been tasked with looking at what the allowable cap is and then making a recommendation to the administration to build a budget either at the cap or below the cap. And that's what this chart shows very clearly, in that in 3 of the last 5 years, the board has adopted a budget below the allowable cap. And I think that's the challenge each year, is to trying to find the balance between what is necessary to enhance and preserve an outstanding instructional program while being responsible to the taxpayers. And I think the board has done a good job in finding that balance. I think the community has shown support for the actions of the board and the percentage in which our budgets have passed. And I think that that's our challenge again this year, to look at that allowable cap and then to make informed decisions of what we think best supports our program and is responsible to our taxpayers. Thank you, Ms. Dunkel.
Thank you. So continuing on the discussion of the tax levy and tax cap, the initial tax levy projection is due to New York State on March 1st. 2 of the major factors in determining the tax levy calculation is both our building aid and our debt that exists with the district. So as I just mentioned, we're going to be going out to borrow money in the spring to pay for all the projects that are taking place in the summer. That number, along with additional building aid that we anticipate receiving for the projects that have recently been closed, affect the tax levy calculation, which is why one of the reasons it is not prepared for this evening, because we don't have that number finalized and we don't want to mislead the board or the community. So since we do not have those final numbers, we've had discussions with our financial advisors, and our current tax levy is estimated somewhere between 0 and 2.5%. So tonight we're looking for some guidance from the Board of Education for a target on where they would like to see the tax cap come in. And just regarding, just want to take a step back, regarding state aid. So the initial state aid runs have been released, but again, because some of the numbers we know are not finalized, I didn't feel it was necessary to share with the community of the board tonight because those numbers are going to change. But one thing I did want to mention is that we did receive an increase in allocation to our UPK program. This current year, we had $216,000, which equates to 40 seats for children. Our allocation for next year right now is projected at over $415,000, which would allow us an additional 37 seats for our UPK program. So I just wanted to make the board and the community aware that we have seen that increase in the UPK allocation. In addition to that, we are still in process of submitting, and I believe Dr. Bossert spoke about this at the last meeting, on the expansion grant for UPK as well. So the goal is to eventually be able to fund UPK for all the students in the Elwood community. So I just wanted to mention that. This slide represents our estimated rollover budget, which is, it's the expenditure side of the budget, just so we have an idea what we're looking at moving forward. And when we talk about rollover budget, we're talking about no enhancements or reductions to the current budget that we're in 2022-23. This takes into account all contractual obligations, salary increases for our staff, our all benefits, transportation increases that we're already aware of because we have a transportation contract in place. I believe we are now going into year 3 of a 5-year contract. So that, putting all those numbers into the budget, the overall increase to the budget is roughly $3.7 million, or a 5.3% increase. And again, I do expect those numbers to fluctuate a little. They may go up, they may go down. We don't have our final BOCES numbers yet. Working with Ms. Eileen Kelly-Gorman for special education expenses. We're still working on some technology enhancements. We're also aware of some teacher retirements, so there will be some fluctuations in all the categories. Some may increase, some may decrease. So I just wanted to share that with the board, but I also wanted to share this slide. I thought it was important for you to see where we are as far as a rollover budget is concerned. Now I know the last meeting we spoke about our foundation aid, and that was roughly a $1.7 million increase. You can see from the rollover increase, we're already at $3.6 million. So our entire state aid increase will not cover our basic rollover increase, but that's where we work with administration and the Board of Education to identify where we can, make changes. And we're also, we're looking to make enhancements as well, as Dr. Bassett spoke about, and he'll look to that again. He'll look to speak to that this evening as well. But again, I just wanted to make the board aware of where we are at this point. Speaking of changes, Dr. Bassett.
My turn. And since Ms. Dunkel took a shot at me to begin her presentation, I'll remind her that she created the slides I was reading. So this slide is a review of one that was presented last month. The administration worked in concert with our faculty and with our stakeholders to determine where we felt priorities existed within our current program and any missing pieces that we needed to identify. And I went through all of these points with the board last month, so I won't go point by point, but I will share that those that we are carefully reviewing are at the top of the slide. These are items that we've identified as no longer under review, but now recommended. These are things that we don't feel we can responsibly roll over our program without having these modifications. So very quickly, the additional ICT class at kindergarten. When we have 40 classified students coming up from the preschool level, we need to make sure that the appropriate services are available to them in kindergarten. So that has become almost a mandatory addition to our program because we would be hard-pressed to offer a quality program without it. Same holds true for the special education class coming up from 5th grade to 6th grade. We need to make sure services are available as recommended in 6th grade. We already made an adaptation to the ICT model at Boyd to make sure that students have full-time assistants or special education teachers in their classroom. So we're now counting that as part of our rollover budget as something that we understand we need again next year. Some of the point 4s, point 2s to help support those point 4, I know the board understands, but for the community, a full-time teacher is a 1.0, so a point 4 teacher represents 2 periods a day of instruction and it goes up that way by percentage. We need these part-time staff members, and it could be a singular staff member playing multiple roles, to make sure we're supporting these initiatives at the middle school and the high school. And that transfer to capital piece, that's going to be important because that action not only helps to build fiscal health within the district, but is also a portion of what helps to identify what our tax levy cap is going to be. And we're going to need that flexibility so we can maximize revenue to meet those gaps that Ms. Dunkel just presented. So we will have concrete projections and numbers for the board after aid is finalized. And then the second list of the things that we still consider priorities, we still consider under review, but it would be irresponsible to call them definitively included in the budget just yet before we have a stronger vision of our financial position. So I'm not going to read them to you, but these are the items that we discussed at the last meeting that we'll continue to review, we continue to prioritize, we continue to really hope to be able to include in the budget, but we'll have a clearer picture of what we can definitively include next time. But we did listen to the priorities as identified by the Board of Education. We heard very clearly what each board member articulated as priorities to charge the administration for inclusion within the budget. So we put them on the slide to let you know we heard you loud and clear, and we are working to make sure that the priorities identified by the Board of Education will be reflected in the administrative proposed budget that we ask you to adopt in the very near future. So the slides indicate items that certainly help us to meet our mission, which I listed on the slide. And you can see how the priorities of the board are very much in line with our vision and mission as a district. Back to you, Ms. Dunkel.
Thank you. I actually think that that concludes most of the presentation. Just a reminder, the next budget workshop, we will be going over the revenue side of the budget and the proposed tax levy with the Board of Education. That meeting will be March 2nd, 7:30 here in the middle school library.
Thank you, Ms. Dunkel. Usually at this meeting, since it is our last workshop, I know that the administration's looking for a guidance of where the board's comfortability is. I'm going to ask the board. We're going to go right down the line, talk individually, however you want to do it, but we have to give this administration an idea of where we want the budget to be built around. So I'm going to ask everybody to give their comfortability and where they're comfortable knowing what we know today and the guidance that we've been provided tonight with the presentation and the two presentations prior, just a number.
And just to clarify, and thank you, Mr. Tomio, I'm not looking for a specific number, we're looking for a range. We understand that it's very hard to pick a specific number without knowing exactly what would be included or not included at that number. But what I'm looking for tonight is if the board is, interested in, I am going to assume the board is not interested in piercing the tax levy cap. Am I correct in that assumption?
I'll survey that first. Yeah, you have a
Yes.
consensus.
Yes.
Don't go near the cap.
We will not pierce the cap, and I don't think that's wise, and it's not something I think strikes that balance with the community that we previously discussed. But where we, in our initial calculations, have a sense the budget will fall, although it could be between 0 and 2.5%, trying to look at the projections carefully as the numbers become clear, we do have a sense that the tax cap calculation will fall between 1 and 2%. And I think what I'm really looking for tonight is guidance from the board for us to continue to work to build a budget where the tax levy cap would fall between 1 and 2%. So rather than, asking for a specific number, I'm really looking for consensus from the board to continue working in that direction.
Okay. Do we have consensus to build the budget around a 1 to 2% range?
Yeah, I think, it depends. Yes, I think if the 2%, as long as it's under the tax cap, right, which is what it's going to be, because we don't know that number, we don't know what our number is going to be. So it's feasible, to keep it in that range. It's hard to, make a
No,
prediction.
I understand it. It's hard, it's hard on
asking
our
for-
side as well, and I understand that, but without some of those additional numbers, we can't, I don't want to provide incorrect information to the board or the community. So we're pretty comfortable in speaking with the financial advisors, like Dr. Bassett said, that it will land between 1 and 2. So we're looking for guidance.
Lorraine, can I make a
Using that
suggestion?
range.
I
Yes.
think you've done this in the past. Could you propose the budget at 1, 1.5, and 2, given what you want to have inside the budget, or what will fall as far as
Honestly, and
enhancements?
Dr. Bassett interrupt me if I speak incorrectly, I think the better plan would be to build the budget, I'll just say at 2%, and see what we can include in there. And then if the board is not happy with that or don't think the community would support it, then we look to make reductions at that point. Dr. Bassett, I don't know if that's fair.
Listen, I want the board to be comfortable with the vote that they're going to be asked to take. I think that's a model that works for the administration. We have the slides of what the priorities are, what the proposals are, and if we build it hypothetically at 2%, we would then show you what would have to be reduced to go below it with specific items, not just dollar figures. We would say, in order to get to 1.5, here are the items that would have to come out. And I think that has been useful to the board in the past.
Correct. I think we just need to see a full picture.
Yep.
I think it's easy to say 2%, but without understanding what the severity of cutting it down to 1.5 would be is kind of ill-advised, I think, for ourselves to make that decision. So if you want to build it at 2, and then if needed, we have to look for reductions, and we can earmark specific reductions to carve out and get down to a number that's palatable for the board.
Perfect,
And
thank
what
you.
we think the community will support.
Okay, great, thank you.
All right. Do you have clear marching orders? Okay. Thank you, board. Thank you, administration.
Can I ask a question about the, gosh, now I'm going to brain freeze, about the going out for the bond, the rest of the payment?
Yes.
That we're going to do that in the spring, which is going to be incorporated, and that's going to add,
Yes, so
to keep
we're,
our tax cap low.
right, so we'll look to borrow in the spring, and the first payment, the first debt payment on that will be due next school year, so that becomes part of our debt expense
For the upcoming.
for the
budget that we're looking-
23,
okay.
24 school year, correct?
Is that going, do you know the term of that loan? Are we looking?
We're currently working with our financial advisors to figure out what the best term would be.
Okay. then
It will probably
Give us the
range
maximum
anywhere,
benefit, is what you're saying.
correct, it'll be
Okay.
anywhere, I would probably say from 5 to 15 years.
Okay. And also incorporated in that budget is going to be the money that, the 16% increase that we got from the state, that was all in the paper over this weekend.
Yes.
Okay. And that, all right. Do we have any proposed retirements? Do we
I am
know of
aware
any
of,
yet
I'm
so
aware
far?
of 2 at the, well, officially, we're aware of 2, and there's been some talk. We've had some employees speak with the Human Resource Department about their pending retirement, but we haven't received any official notification.
Okay. All right. And benefits, you know, you talked about the increase in benefits and the health benefits. That's really contractual, so that's not something that fluctuates from year to year, correct?
No,
So
that-
we can't renegotiate every year, or,
We can negotiate with our unions for their portion of the health insurance, but the health
Right.
insurance rates themselves are determined by New York State, so that's non-negotiable.
okay. All right, thank you. I appreciate it,
You're
your
welcome.
presentation.
I just have a quick question, and if you don't have the answer, get back to me. It's just impromptu. Our 16-17 year, and I may be off on this, that's when we started talking about this capital bond. And we needed the capital bond because we needed the building debt on the books, per se, to help offset where we were, because we were falling under 2%, and our costs were exceeding where we were at.
Correct. It's. I mean,
Seeing the trend, are we heading back in that direction?
yes. So
Okay.
this year, and I think we spoke about it at the first budget workshop. I'm not 100% sure. The end of this fiscal year, we're due for another building condition survey. And that building condition survey goes to New York State, and then out of that survey, the facilities committee, along with the board and the community, will develop a new bond project that we'll need to go out for in probably, I would say, maybe 3 years. Again, because we'll have debt falling off our books from prior bonds, it's always good, and it sounds silly, like for school districts to have debt. But in addition to that, these building condition surveys are mandatory by New York State, and there's a lot more infrastructure that needs to take place in the school district to keep our buildings running the way they are. I wasn't here when the bond was initially created, but I remember from conversation, I think there was about $90 million worth of projects, and obviously we didn't want to go out to $90 million at one shot, so we brought that down to $34 million, so there's still a lot of work to be done in the district.
Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none. Thank you. Oops, sorry.
I think that was it.
That was a late one.
Sorry. Yeah, I just had a question that I just, also, if you can't answer it tonight, that's fine. But the transportation, I know we've been talking about that. And I know that, there was like a little bit of a over the years contract. So this was predicted that this year we would kind of be increased by this amount?
Yes, each year of we agreed to each year of the 5-year contract, there's a specific increase built into that contract. Yeah, so we're not, that's not, at this point, it's not negotiable year after year, but once the, once we're in year 4 of the transportation contract, we'll go out for another RFP to try to elicit either a different vendor or lower costs.
Okay, great, thank you.
Welcome.
Sorry for a last-minute question. If you don't have the answer, you can get back to me. I know enrollment's going down along in Suffolk County, but I know there's been an increase in students with special services and ELL students. And do you know approximately how much that might increase? You know, these are services that we have to provide. Do you know how much that's going to increase in our next budget?
I don't at this time. Again, I'm working with Ms. Kelly Gorman on each year. She evaluates our students and what needs, and some students require more services. Some students we're able to take back into the school district and sending out to BOCES or some other school. So it depends on the number of students and the needs of the students.
Okay.
And additionally, those costs themselves are going up in price.
Right. So as I mentioned before, 8% increase in students with disabilities, and we have a 56% increase of ELL. So that's going to, all districts across Long Island are going to have to increase their budget to meet the needs of all these students.
Yes,
Mr.
and
Gurley.
there are some grants that are available. I know I've spoken to Dr. Hood since joining us that, you know, we can look to apply for, but, you know, there are limited funds
If
for
you'd
those
like
purposes.
to know the Elwood number, over the last 10 years, the fastest growing percentage of our population are our English language learners. And over the last 10 years, our ELL population has increased 64%. And it is also the fastest growing area of our staff, as the level of service those learners require is some direct contact with teachers that we required additional staffing to support. Whereas there was a period of time in Elwood under my tenure where there were 2 full-time ELL teachers that were able to service all of our students. We are closer to 6 now, and I can see that that is an area of our staff that will continue to grow as our population and our demographics continue to shift. So you are correct that depending on the population of students you are serving, the expense can vary. I've told the story many times, so forgive me, but there was a year in my tenure where we built in a $250,000 excess into the special education budget for anticipated potential expenses. And that was exhausted over the summer because of one family moving into the district that had 2 high-cost students who required residential placements that we are responsible to provide. So you are correct that depending on the type of services the students require, our budget fluctuates tremendously.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Uncle. One more question you can get back to me on. The final score to the Super Bowl? No? This is a
35-28.
That is a prediction. Chiefs
Chiefs.
of Philly. Oh, okay. Bold prediction. I'm thinking you have those Super Bowl boxes, but all right. Thank you. All right, that brings us up to our donations this evening. Mr. Scarola.
Thank you, Mr. Tomio. Recommended action, be it resolved that upon the recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools, the Board of Education hereby accepts a $500 donation with gratitude from the Harley Avenue PTA to support the 2023 STEAM Fair, which already took place, and I was lucky enough to attend it. It was wonderful. I saw many happy students doing cool experiments. Parents were excited, and it was really nice to see a lot of our staff and administrators there. So on a personal, being there, it was a great event. So thank you, Harley Avenue PTA, for making this possible.
Thank you, Mr. Scroll. Always a great event. May I have a motion for the donation that Mr. Scroll just spoke to? Motion, Mrs. Mamalito, seconded Mrs. Weiss. All in favor? 5-0. Brings us up to our consent agenda this evening. May I have a motion to approve the consent agenda in its entirety? Motion, Dr. Siddiqui, seconded by Mrs. Scrolla. All in favor? 5-0. That brings us up this evening. We have 9 policies up on the agenda for a first read. Are there any questions regarding the draft policies? We have, do I have to, Mary Lou, read all these? I don't, right? Okay. I've done that before, thank goodness. All right, so are there any questions regarding the policies, the draft policies tonight?
Mrs. Weiss asked that I share this with the board during our policy committee. These policies are a bit different than the last lot we brought forward to the Board of Education in that there were no administrative changes made to the drafts that were presented by council at NYSBA. Our district partners with the New York State School Boards Association, and they employ legal counsel to monitor district board policy manuals to make sure that all of our policies are aligned with current state regulations and state laws and any federal laws that may apply. So we pay for that service. So quarterly we get an update where they review all of our policies, and they will either send policies that are absent or policies that need revision. So these were the policies that were brought to us by NYSBA, and it is unusual that the administration didn't need to make changes to make sure the policies were aligned with the Elwood School District. So when the policy committee met, there were no changes made to the draft. Dr. Siddiqui and Mrs. Weiss serve as the board liaisons to policy, and these policies are presented to the board as written by NYSBA. Tonight is a first read. We have been advised by council that there is no vote when policies are brought forward for a first reading. Just any questions you may have or any discussion regarding the policies take place, and then if they are recommended to go on the next agenda for second reading, that is when there is a vote taken and the policies are adopted.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions regarding these 9 policies that are on the agenda this evening? Seeing no questions, this will serve as our first reading. Ms. Marks, if you could add this on the next agenda, March 16th? March 16th. Alrighty, thank you. That brings us up to our second residence remarks this evening. Seeing residents, I'll read my blurb. All right, the board encourages residents to attend its meeting, and at this section of the agenda affords them the opportunity to speak. Persons wishing to speak should identify themselves, state whether they are a resident of the Elwood School District or any organization that they represent at this meeting. Comments related to district business or any agenda item should be kept as brief as possible and may not exceed 3 minutes. Board Policy 1230. Questions or comments concerning matters which are not on the agenda will be taken under consideration and may be discontinued by the board president. Public discussion of matters relating to staff, students, or others at which their reputation, privacy, or right to due process could be in some way violated is prohibited. Alrighty, I'm going to start my clock in a second. Ms. Kern, thank you.
Hi, Amy Kern. I actually had a couple of comments or questions about Ms. Gorman's presentation. I had a concern about the mention of the pushing of mental health practitioners into classrooms. At a recent John Glenn ADL meeting, a faculty member had conceded that students are sometimes hesitant to share their viewpoints in class, and that led to a suggestion by a faculty member about bringing mental health practitioners into the classroom during lessons involving sensitive topics. I had shared a concern that doing so might minimize authentic dialogue due to fear of judgment on viewpoints, and I think in order to meet the needs of every student that we have to consider the fact that all students may not feel comfortable talking in front of a mental health practitioner, and I'm hoping that they wouldn't be compelled to do so. And I also wondered whether, I noticed on the first slide, the tree slide, there was mention of students as co-designers of curriculum. I was hoping maybe to get a little bit more information about what that involves.
Yeah, thank you, Mrs. Kern. Well, first of all, when we talk about development of program and curriculum, we want to hear from student voice. And to speak to your last question, we would always make sure student voice has weight on some of the programs that we implement for our system. As far as push-ins for mental health providers, that's a fairly common strategy to use within the classrooms. We encourage our mental health professionals to push in when topics are being covered in the classroom that more relates to their expertise. You know, the district has focused a great deal on social emotional literacy. So when our guidance counselors, social workers, psychologists have greater expertise in an area for collaborative instruction, we ask them to push in.
Okay. But students wouldn't be compelled then, if not comfortable with another person in the classroom they don't know as well, they wouldn't be compelled to participate in the conversation in their presence?
Well, listen, Mrs. Kern, I would hope, I don't want to speak in absolutes, but I would hope that there is never an occasion where a student is made to feel uncomfortable in a classroom.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kern.
Hi, my name is Agapi Bell. I'm a parent in the district, a resident, and my comments and views represent just myself, not any organization that I may be a part of or in leadership of. So I just wanted to let the Board of Ed and our administrative leaders know, so as a parent and community member, what I see is, when we were looking at the budget presentation, I'm really excited about the intramurals, and that I know that we were, it was on like, we don't pay the assistant coaches stipends like other districts do, but I just wanted to put my voice in publicly that athletics unifies us, and it unifies all the children, boys, girls, everyone together. We are a very diverse community, and in our athletic teams, I have personally seen that we are a beautifully diverse community, and everyone has an opportunity to play, no matter their background and whatever. So I really hope that when you're creating the new budget, at the top of the priorities for the new programs and the additional things, that the stipends for the assistant coaches and the intramural program for the middle school. I only have high school kids left, but I think as feeder program, allowing the middle school kids who don't make the volleyball team, who don't make the basketball team, have an opportunity to still play. And you never know when that development happens, and then all of a sudden they have like a punctuated growth in the middle of an intramural season instead of, when they didn't make at the tryouts. So you don't know when it'll happen. So I think that's brilliant, whoever came up with the idea about the intramurals at the middle school. As a parent, I think it'll help the high school, and the future. So I wholeheartedly hope that does not get added. And our assistant coaches, what I have seen, are amazing, and they volunteer. And I know what it is to volunteer, and with your heart. But what they do is more than volunteering. There's travel, there's like the hours, and I'm just like dumbfounded that they don't already get stipends. So, and it just seems like a big bang for our buck. Like, it doesn't seem like it's going to be a huge addition to the budget to add both those things. And it'll impact a lot of children in so many ways. It's just widespread and impactful. So I hope that gets included when you're creating the new budget.
Thank you, Ms. Bell.
Yeah.
Seeing other residents?
Greetings all. Can you hear me well enough?
Yes.
All right. My name is Michael Moran. I'm a parent and a resident. My family purchased this book, Melissa, after the last meeting. We want to make sure we had a copy of it in case it somehow disappeared from the shelves here. Now, I read it, and I will say that it is not just for our trans students. It is for students like Kelly, who want to know how to best support and love their friends and be allies. It's for students who have siblings like Scott, who know that their love for their siblings is not dependent upon their gender. It is for the parents in this community who know that these difficult conversations have to be had. And this sets an example for that. It's for the teachers who need to understand that their gendered language isolates some in the classroom. The ladies and gentlemen, the boys and girls. They could be scholars, they could be students, they could be folks, and not that binary divide. And it's for those students like Jeff, who perhaps don't understand the weight of their words, who don't understand that when they bully others, the bullying doesn't end in the schoolyard or in the classroom, it comes home. And it's heavy enough to crush someone if they're not strong like Melissa. Now, Melissa found strength in this book, not from necessarily her parents. Her mama doesn't understand her quite. She has to have that conversation with her. She finds strength in a book, in Charlotte's Web. In that book, she finds the language she needs to build her confidence and express her identity. She has that book. Our students should have this book. Now, I heard mention of it being perhaps moved to a guidance counselor's office. That's great. Every counselor should have a copy of it, as should every English teacher, as should the libraries we have here. I don't find this book beyond our students' comprehension. In 5th grade, they are instructed about gender, if I'm not mistaken. In the spring, they have conversations about their biological gender. They're already talking about gender. Melissa is in 4th grade. Some of our trans students know who they are before they reach 4th grade. This is why we need this book. It's not mandatory. No one has to read it. But students who want to read it should have access to it. They should not be deprived access or have to get special permission to leave the classroom to go find a book. If it's in the guidance office and nowhere else, they won't know where to find it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Moran. Ms. Mamalito?
Sir, I just want to thank you for not being a bystander. Thank you so much for your kind words.
Any other residents' remarks?
Good evening, board. Andre Berknell, parent, taxpayer, resident. Forgive me, I wasn't planning to speak tonight. I guess I kind of thought the issue of the book was gone. Since it was brought up again, I wanted to just add my comments to the book. I believe it was George, now it's Melinda. I was disturbed with the book when I found out a neighbor told me that her 6th grader came home with the book. I do think that, it is a book that has some things that some of our students possibly could use as a resource, but also that should not necessarily be available to every student, as I do feel that my children might get confused a little bit by it. I have one who's slightly older, one who's a little bit older, and one who's younger. Furthermore, I felt this way about the book when I read when I heard that. I wasn't expecting to say this, but one of the other things that disturbs me about the book is that it seems like there is, from what I've read, I have not read the entire book, but the brother or the sibling of one of the students seems to give instructions to George, Melinda, on how to hide their pornography searches on their computer. I don't think this is a skill that our students need to learn from literature. I hope to God they don't learn it from their friends. I know I was in 6th grade when I discovered pornography, and it made my life a living hell for decades. And I pray to God that my children don't discover it. And I pray that they do not discover a book that might lead them there. I think I turned out pretty damn good, but I know that that was something that I had to monkey on my back for a long, long time. And if I can stop my kids or any of the other kids in this district from having to deal with that, I think it's worth moving the book. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Purnell. Any other residents' remarks?
Okay. My name is Leonard Suskin. I am a parent here and a member of the community. I also need reading glasses. So there have been book bans in over 138 school districts across 32 states over the past year. That represents over 5,000 schools, over 4 million students. and I hope to not see it come here. Over 40% of these have been books regarding LGBTQ-related content, which we're following suit here. Melissa is one such book. Flamer is another one in the high school. One deals with gender, the other with sexuality. These are appropriate things for kids to learn about. And, you know, Flamer I'm going to mention because that's a very controversial one. It's uncomfortable for a lot of parents. Deals very frankly and explicitly with sexuality, but this is relevant to kids of that age. To some of them, not all of them. It won a Lambda Literary Award, a Massachusetts Book Award. The Young American Library Society Great Graphic Novels for Teens in 2021. This is a well-regarded book, and it's one that makes parents uncomfortable. And how do we balance that? You know, the organization PEN America defines a book ban as any action taken against a book based on its content, a result of parent or community challenges, administrative decisions, or in response to action by lawmakers or government officials. And that's what's happening here. And I know that we talk about parents' rights, we talk about our comfort as parents. Parents and guardians should be, and this is per PEN America, organization engaged with this. We do need to be partners with educators in our children's education and need channels for communicating with school administrators, teachers, and librarians, particularly concerning the education of our own children. Public schools are, by design, supposed to rely on the expertise, ethics, and discretion of educational professionals to make the decisions. The decision can't be my comfort or discomfort, the community's comfort or discomfort. That's part of it, we can speak, but the decision has to be what is good for the student. And we need to be here for the students. That's the goal. And again, from Penn, children deserve to see themselves in books. They deserve access to a diversity of stories and perspectives that help them understand and navigate the world around them. Public schools that ban books reflecting diverse identities risk creating an environment in which students feel excluded, with potentially profound effects on how students learn and become informed citizens in a pluralistic society.
Sorry to interrupt.
That's okay. I am famously long-winded. That's one of the things I'm good at.
I was going to say, finish your thought, though, if you would like.
You know, my thought is that this has to be for the students, not the parents. And the American Library Association Bill of Rights talks about this and about students' rights to it. I have here articles with the information that I quoted from, and the American Library Association Bill of Rights as interpreted for school libraries. I would like to pass those to the board for your consideration.
Thank you, Suskin. If you can give it to our district clerk, she will make copies if needed and disseminate to the full Board of Education. You make copies, all right. All right. Then we will collect those at the end of the evening from our district clerk. Thank you. Any other residents wishing to speak tonight?
Chris Fox, resident. To echo some of the other comments, I was not going to speak tonight. And I'll be as a professional about this as I possibly can. Be very, very, very careful with using terms like book banning. Okay? There's a historical reference to book banning that is very dangerous. When I was in school, the books that were in the school were a resource for the students related to their classes. That's it. No one is asking for a book to be banned. Books are accessible via your phone, the public library, or the local bookstore. And that's it. I just think we have to be careful when using certain terminology when it comes to certain things because of the connotations tied to them. I know that there is an effort right now to have a certain amount of books to look at. It's going to go through a process. The board might eventually wind up with that decision. But I think what we need to look at is a professional way and not use terms that are going to inflame. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fox.
Erin Abisher, resident. Page 14 of Flamer. Hey, Navarro, suck any good dicks lately? Ha 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 ha. Page 22. What's wrong, Navarro? I thought you like a big sausage in your mouth. Ha ha ha. Do I need to go on? I mean, I can. But this is what we want in our schools? This is what we want our children to be exposed to and have access to? How much time is on the clock?
2 minutes and 30 seconds.
Great. Unbelievable. Okay. We each busted a load into this bottle. Oh, I'm sorry, this is page...
This is Abisher. The difference between
No,
selecting,
I'm
selecting
reading
a book off the shelf and presenting at a public meeting is that no one selected the literature that you're sharing right now. And I think
No, the
that-
librarian selected it.
I think that when a student selects a book off the shelf, it is by their choice, and we've made that point very clear to you.
Okay.
When you're looking for hyperbolic commentary at a public meeting, I don't think it's appropriate to read out of context quotes that no one here has selected the book off the shelf to read tonight. I think you're making
that's
your
their
point.
business,
I
to
think
select
you're
it or not
making your
select it.
point that not every piece of literature is appropriate for every student, as I made very clear when we met in my office. So to come to a public meeting for shock value to the community is not productive.
I really had no intention of speaking, but after listening to some of the other comments being made, I thought that it was appropriate that it be brought to the attention of the public some of the information that is available inside of this book, which was selected by your librarian in the high school, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, it's available in a singular copy in the high school, as we discussed at length in my office. And as I explained to you then, and I'll reiterate here, no student is required to read Flamer.
I never
or
said that they
any-
were required.
But
I
you're
never made that statement.
requiring the public tonight to hear out of context excerpts from the book with no context for how they're used within the literature, which I think is unproductive.
Okay, well, I invite everybody to go take out Flamer and read it for themselves.
They'll have to take turns because we only have one copy.
Perfect.
Thank you, Ms. Abisher. Unfortunately not, Ms. Bill. You used your time up. I didn't track how much time you utilized. I'm sorry, Ms. Bill.
Hi, everybody. My name is Marie Nealon. I'm a resident. I'm a parent of 3. I've got one in Boyd, one in middle school, and one in high school. And I'm also an avid reader. I've always been an avid reader. I remember exhausting my elementary school library's YA section and then doing the same in the school library. And because I was such an avid reader, I know that even in the 90s when I was growing up, there were discussions of sexuality and violence in books that we all had access to. And yeah, sometimes we shared the same copy of Flowers in the Attic. You know, kids do get access to human issues like gender and sexuality in a lot of different forums. The difference between my childhood in the 90s and what's happening now is that the internet and texting has changed the game. And I worry about things for my kids that my parents didn't have to worry about. These books that have understandably made some parents uncomfortable because these topics are difficult to talk about, they're also opportunities to talk to your children about these issues. I mean, when you're watching a movie with your child and you see something come up and you want to give context, that is a time that you do that. So I think everybody should be reading those books. My 16-year-old just gave me her copy of Heartstopper and said it was so good I'd probably read it in a day, that it was really an exploration of healthy relationships. And I think that's a really important thing to keep in mind, that we should be talking about what a healthy relationship looks like. Maybe that relationship does involve some sexuality, and this is your time to talk about that. So I don't think that it makes sense to remove these books from the shelves. I think they're going to get these books by hook or by crook, even if it's not on the school library. I don't think that we should send the message to kids that this conversation is something to be hidden and kept in the closet. I don't think that that is the right message that we want to send. Certainly, the dialogue that we heard tonight was pretty explicit. And that's something that we should be talking to our kids about, what their conversations are like. We should be looking at search histories, and parents should know that nothing is ever erased forever. So I appreciate the board's approach to this issue. It seems very measured and reasonable, and I know that there have been multiple ways for parents to make their viewpoints known and have some input. So I appreciate that. All right, I'll wrap it up. Just want to say thank you for this great presentation. Congratulations, Elwood Wrestling and the debate team, 5th in the county. That was amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Seeing any other residents wishing to speak? You have every opportunity to email the Board of Education and the administration. Ms. Bell, I wouldn't know where to begin the clock. I wouldn't know where you left off. I wouldn't know how to justify 10 seconds, a minute and a half. I would say definitely, if you have additional comments, to email the Board of Education, the administration. That goes for everybody. If you didn't have enough time or you want to further your input, please email the Board of Education or the administration. Seeing any other residents? None? All right. A motion to adjourn the meeting. Motion, Mr. Scrolla, second, Mrs. Mamalito. All in favor? 5-0. Everybody have a wonderful February break.